Hey there! So if you do genealogy research outside of your native language, you probably already use Google Translate, which is a great tool for figuring out the meaning of a word that you're unfamiliar with. I certainly use it to look up words, but Google Translate serves another purpose for me, which I want to share with you in this video. So if you don't already know me, I'm Julie Cahill-Tarr with Genealogy in Action, and I provide tips and tricks to make your genealogy life easier and more productive so you can find your elusive ancestors quickly and confidently. So if you're a dedicated genealogist looking to level up your research skills, you are in the right place. Now in this video, I'm going to show you how I use Google Translate to hear the pronunciation of words, especially names. And stick around until the end where I have an additional tip about surnames. So you've probably experienced instances where names are way off in spelling, making it difficult to find what you're looking for. Now, from a U.S. perspective, we see this all the time with our non-English speaking immigrant ancestors, such as mangled names in censuses and other records. Now, the reason usually has to do with how the record taker heard the name, and they likely wrote it the way it sounded to them. And given that certain letters and letter combinations are different across languages, not to mention the foreign accent, those phonetic spellings can end up way off in left field. So I like to pop names into Google Translate and listen to the pronunciation so I can come up with alternatives based on how it sounds, giving me a list of variants to search for. So let me show you how to listen to the pronunciation in Google Translate. So let's start out with a few given names. Okay, so this first one is a German name. We see it in English, we pronounce it Justine. But let's listen to what it sounds like in German. And to do that, we come down here to this little speaker icon that when you hover over it, pops up the word listen. And we just click on this.
Justine.
Justina. So that's very different than Justine. Let's look at another German given name. This one, if I saw it in English, I would pronounce it Emily. But let's listen to what it sounds like in German.
Emilie.
So Emilia. So you might see this spelled Emilie, I-A. You might see it spelled with an A at the beginning and different variants in the middle. So this is definitely one that you would want to come up with some different spellings for. Let's look at an Italian given name. So I'm going to switch to Italian up here, click the speaker button.
Calogna.
And we get Calogna. All right, and we'll do one more. This one is French. So I'll change the tab to French. Hit the speaker button.
Laurent.
I'm not even going to try that because it just sounds very different than what I would pronounce it. It's one of those that I have to kind of listen to over and over again and really figure out what I might be hearing and how I would potentially spell it to get those variants. All right, so let's move on to some surnames. This one is a German surname, and let's listen to that.
Henfler.
Henfler. So it does explain why I see it spelled with an E here. Let's look at this one.
Lepine.
Lepine. So that explains why I see this spelled with like an E at the end. Sometimes I see it spelled like this or like this. So sometimes I see it spelled different ways, but in English, we would kind of tack that E maybe on the end. So just something to be aware of and again, to add to your alternate list. Now let's do my favorite Italian name. So I would have no idea. I do know how it's pronounced. I've heard it in the family, so I do know how it's pronounced, but I would have absolutely no idea if I saw this word, how in the world to pronounce it. And hearing it, I wouldn't have the foggiest idea how to spell it either. So let's take a listen to this one.
Sciacqua.
Sciacqua. Now, when you hear it and you kind of think of Italian language, if you know anything about it, you kind of can figure, you can kind of see it now that you've heard it. But still, it is one of those tricky ones. And if I was completely English, knew nothing about Italian, and I heard that pronounced to me as a census taker, it would not come out looking like this. That is for sure. All right, so I've got one more here. And this name actually comes from like the Alsace-Lorraine area, which was sometimes French, sometimes German. And so I listened to it in both French and German. So we're going to listen to the French one first.
Laisseur.
Lisser. So almost like this should be an I, perhaps. But let's listen to it in German.
Leser.
Leser. So that would explain why in almost every record I see it spelled like this with an A. And one of the variants that I might add to that would be removing an S because it almost sounded like the word laser, exaggerated a little bit, but the word laser in English. So that would only be one S. So yeah, just listen to it and think about if I heard this, how would I spell it? If I didn't know how to spell it the real way or the right way, the quote unquote right way, how would I do that? So one quick thing that I want to mention is that not all languages that are represented here, and there are a lot of languages, not all of them have the pronunciation available. So, for example, Luxembourgish, it doesn't have it. See, their button is there, but it's grayed out, and if I click on it, it says voice output isn't available for Luxembourgish. So there are some where you might not be able to listen to it. You might be able to find another tool somewhere online that may be able to do that. So I encourage you to try that. But a lot of these different languages do have the pronunciation. So now, one other thing I like to do with surnames is determine if they translate into something in English. Now, why would I want to do that? Well, sometimes our immigrant ancestors changed their surnames to an English variant to better assimilate with their fellow Americans. Let's take a look at a couple. So we're going to look at German. All three of these examples are going to be German. So this is Schwartz. Now it can be spelled without the Z. It can be spelled without the T. Whichever way, it translates in English to black. So if you are having trouble finding your immigrant later in life, you might want to try and see if it translates to another word in English and look under that word. And on the flip side of that, if you are working backwards, starting with the current and the surname is Black, and you learn that they're from a German-speaking area, come to Google Translate, figure out what the word Black is in German, and start looking for that surname in the homeland, wherever, or in the townland that you happen to figure out that's where they're from. Because you're not going to find them listed as Black. It's just not going to happen. So let's look at another one. So Zimmerman might be changed to the surname Carpenter. And finally, Schneider, which over here is showing me Cutter, but typically it translates to Taylor. I don't know why it's showing me this one, but it typically translates to Taylor. So you may see it as the profession Taylor, and you may also see it spelled Taylor instead of the I. All right, so now it's your turn to take some action. Go through your non-English given names and surnames and pop them into Google Translate and listen to the pronunciation. Take it a step further and create a list of alternate spellings based on that pronunciation. So I hope that you've enjoyed this video and that you're ready to try this so you can learn how an ancestor's name was pronounced, and hopefully it will give you some ideas for alternate spellings to search so you can finally find that record you know is out there somewhere. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe for more genealogy tips and tricks using the button below, and click the little bell so you'll be notified when new videos are released. Bye for now.